Hey Jessica, it's me, Mom. Do you remember where I put my credit card? It's not in the desk or the coffee can. Good morning, Mom. Have you checked the living room closet? Said Jessica, who is now 55. Oh right, I forgot about that. Anyway, I have to go. People are waiting for me. 80-year-old Mary replied. Mom, wait, Jessica shouted into the phone. Why do you need your credit card? I bought you groceries on Saturday and left money for bread. Oh, Jessica, the money is there, but I want to withdraw the rest from the card. The bank is saying that as of the first of the month, it will be invalid. They're introducing new regulations. Which bank employees? Mom, not again. Please tell me you didn't let them into the apartment. Jessica's voice grew anxious. No, of course not. What do you think? I'm losing my mind. They're just in the hallway filling out paperwork. Can we talk later? This is embarrassing in front of them. Mom, let me come over now, and we can sort out the money together, okay? Jessica suggested cautiously. Why? Don't worry, my dear. You really don't have to come. Mom, I know where they change money at a better rate. They even give an iron to every customer. Jessica blurted out, trying to lighten the mood. Really? Her mother asked, sounding skeptical. Well, if that's the case, okay. I'll be waiting for you, Jessica. Jessica quickly hailed a cab, threw on some clothes, and rushed out of the house. She felt frustrated with her mother, who had been a source of constant stress lately. More and more, Jessica found herself considering placing her in a nursing home. Mary had lost her husband, John, a decade ago. While he was alive, both Jessica and her brother Robert had a peaceful relationship with their parents. But after John's passing, their mother had become increasingly anxious and increasingly demanding. The youngest son, Robert, who was 47, lived 200 kilometers away from their mother's home. As a result, he only called and visited during holidays. In contrast, the eldest daughter, Jessica, lived nearby and took on the responsibility of caring for their mother, but it wasn't an easy task. Mary lived alone in a 3-room apartment that she and her husband had received from the company back in the Soviet era when their children were still in school. This apartment held deep sentimental value for her. It was where she had spent her life, where her children had grown up, and where she had shared happiness with her husband. Therefore, when Jessica suggested selling the apartment to buy her a 1-room unit in the same building where Jessica and her husband lived, Mary firmly refused. No, Jessica, she sighed. I want to stay in my apartment. I can't imagine having strangers living here. And what about my furniture? It won't fit in a 1-room apartment. I don't want to part with it. Every nail here has a memory attached to it, reminders of my life with your father. Jessica had other ideas for her mother. She and her husband, Brad, offered to move into Mary's apartment to take care of her. They had their own 3-bedroom place, but they could leave it to their son Calvin, who already had a family of his own, a wife and 2 children. Mary, however, refused this suggestion as well. Live with your Brad? No way. You know he irritates me, Jessica. I can't live with him in the same apartment. You can move in, but he can't come. Mom, are you telling me to leave my husband of over 30 years? Jessica was taken aback. I'm not telling you anything, her mother exclaimed indignantly. I just don't want that awful Brad in my home. He scuffles around in his slippers and wrecks the hardwood floors. Just think about how it'll be when he's living here. Jessica sighed, feeling the strain in her relationship with her mother. Mary had always had a sharp temper, and it had only worsened over the years. While Jessica's father was alive, her mother had directed all her attention towards him. Now the focus was on Jessica and the neighbors, whom she often complained about to various authorities, driving everyone, especially Jessica, to distraction. Mary frequently believed that while she was out shopping, someone was prowling around her apartment, even accusing them of stealing cherished items like her grandmother's teaspoons or a straw hat she had brought back from Crimea in 1975. Eventually, those items would turn up, and Mary would explain it away. "See, my daughter, I told you someone was here." "Who are you talking about, Mom?" "The things were found," Jessica replied, exasperated. "They're probably borrowed and returned after use," her mother insisted. As another year went by, Jessica realized something had to change. Her mother was aging, and her condition was deteriorating. Jessica couldn't take her in for multiple reasons. For one, her mother didn't want to live with that wretched Brad, who smokes like a chimney. Secondly, Mary refused to abandon her apartment. Lastly, Jessica and Brad were increasingly considering downsizing to a one-bedroom apartment and using the extra funds to help their son pay off the mortgage on his new house, which featured underground parking for his family and children. Jessica felt like she was stuck in a never-ending loop. It exhausted her to balance her own apartment, her mother's home, and her son's family. The strain was overwhelming. Her husband, Brad, empathized with her plight and tried to help, but he struggled with his mother-in-law's antics. Mary was driving him crazy, so Brad gradually distanced himself from her. Jessica's brother Robert, 47, was not much help either. To her, his contribution consisted of just a weekly phone call, a holiday card, and 1 or 2 visits a year for major holidays. The bulk of the responsibility fell on Jessica. "Look, Robert, we need to do something about Mom. I think she might be showing signs of senile dementia. I visited her the other day, and she asked me, 'Who are you?' From the labor department." My heart nearly stopped. At first, she laughed and said she was joking, but I don't think she was. She genuinely didn't remember me right away. "Jessica, what do you want me to do? I'm too far away, and you're right there. Whatever you decide is how it's going to be. I'll support you. How about we hire an au pair? We can split the cost." "What do you think?" Jessica proposed. "What will people think? 2 kids having strangers look after their mother," Robert replied. "Jess, you live just 2 blocks from her. How hard is it to stop by once or twice a day? Rob, come spend a day here, and you'll see." Jessica laughed. "It's not easy for me. I have a job, a family, a husband, a son, grandchildren who I hardly get to see. I'd love to help my daughter-in-law, but I barely have the time. Imagine how tough it is for her with a 2-year-old. All right, I'll find someone to help out. We can split the cost." Robert finally agreed. "That's great. Look, Robert, it's not just about the running back and forth. It's that Mom is starting to get really anxious. What if the gas is on? What if the iron is left on? That's what scares me. The last time I visited her, I found a 5-liter pot of water on the stove. She was planning to make compote. If it boiled over, it could flood the stove." "Jessica, we'll get her a helper," Robert resolved. But finding someone willing to come help was a different story. No one seemed able to tolerate Mary for long, and soon all applications stopped coming in. Jessica's idea had flopped. But then another thought struck her, prompting her to reach out to Robert again. "Robert, I hope I'm not interrupting. We need to talk." "Hey, Jessica, is this a bad time? I'm on a fishing trip, you know," Robert grumbled, sounding annoyed. "Well, if you're fishing, that's fine," Jessica sighed. "Yeah, go ahead. What's going on with you guys? Are you in trouble again?" Jessica felt a rush of resentment at her brother's tone, which conveyed irritation as if he were tired of her issues. After all, Mary had 2 children. Why was it only Jessica who seemed to care and worry? Swallowing her frustration, she pressed on with the conversation. Robert, no au pair is willing to put up with Mom's whims. They all want triple the pay. What am I supposed to do? Hand over my entire salary? Robert shot back, clearly annoyed. I don't need anything from you personally, Jessica retorted sharply. All right. Don't be angry. What did you want to discuss? Robert asked, his tone more composed. There's a really nice senior center in town. They have spacious rooms, 5 meals a day, full care, and a medical staff that includes physical therapists. So let's get to the point, Jessica. Well, I'd like to consider putting Mom in a nursing home, just for a month to start. Maybe she'd enjoy it there with the companionship, facilities, and medical supervision. Jessica, what are you talking about? A nursing home? Robert replied, surprised. What will people think? It's embarrassing. Embarrassing? This is a private facility, not a charity home. The conditions are quite decent, and so are the prices. With Mom's pension, we'd only need to contribute an extra $15,000 a month. Extra? You must think I'm a millionaire, Jessica. Robert chuckled nervously. If you don't want to deal with her, I'll come down next weekend and talk to her. I'll bring Mom back to live with me. She won't agree to that, Robert. And your wife won't either, Jessica sighed. She will. You just need to find the right way to approach Mom. My wife loves her mother-in-law and respects her, Robert argued before abruptly hanging up. Jessica sensed that Robert was upset, but she was still looking forward to seeing him on Saturday. Yet that weekend came and went with no visit. After another clash with the neighbors that left Mary distressed and suffering from high blood pressure, Jessica reached out to Robert. This is the situation, Jessica. My wife doesn't want Mom living with us. She believes you should love your relatives from a distance, especially your mother-in-law. Robert chuckled, but Jessica didn't find it funny. Why didn't you call? It's embarrassing, Jessica. Don't be mad, okay? Silently, Jessica hung up and decided not to call her brother again. However, it soon became clear that her mother would eventually need to be institutionalized. One morning, Jessica arrived at her mother's house and found her dressed. Mom, where are you going so early? Let's have breakfast together. I bought fresh cottage cheese and sour cream. We can make cheesecakes, she smiled. Jessica, let's do it tonight. I'm late for work, her mother replied, pulling on a raincoat. What work? You've been retired for over 20 years, Jessica exclaimed, her concern growing. It dawned on her that her mother's condition was worsening. The woman was right. Jessica soon realized she needed to move in with her mother, as Mary couldn't be left alone any longer. Far too often, Mary would wake up in the mornings preparing for work, only to forget to turn off the water or the iron. At night, she'd wander around the apartment, searching for items from her past that had long since been discarded. Occasionally, Robert would call Jessica, but she often ignored his calls. He seemed indifferent to all the burden he piled onto her shoulders, and whenever she suggested a solution, he would criticize her instead. Jessica's husband watched his wife silently, feeling an unbearable sense of sympathy for her. She was practically living full-time in her mother's apartment, and he was desperate to find a way out of their predicament. One day, he had an idea. Jessica, why don't you talk to your mom about spending some time in a boarding house? Just for a couple of months, it could give you both a break, and we can cover the cost ourselves without involving your brother. We can pay for a couple of months, but then what? It's too expensive. With Mom's condition, we could apply for her to be declared incapacitated and put her in permanent care. But I don't want her in a social home, and we can't afford a private facility, Jessica replied, shaking her head. Hold on a second. What if your mother actually likes it there? Being Being around other seniors might help her find new friends, or even a nice gentleman, he joked. They have activities, dances, even folk choir singing. Who knows, your mother might thrive. And what good would that do? Jessica asked, still unsure. Look, we could rent out Mary's apartment and supplement her pension if needed. That will cover the fees for a private boarding house, he suggested. Jessica paused, mulling over the idea. It felt like a viable solution after all the stress she had endured caring for her mother. She recognized that if she continued down this path, she might suffer from her own health issues. Living in a constant state of anxiety was taking its toll on her. To her surprise, Mary quickly agreed to the idea of staying in a boarding house for the elderly. With winter approaching, Mary rarely ventured outside. The nursing home promised companionship and social activities, alleviating her loneliness. This arrangement would allow Jessica to focus on work without the daily anxiety of worrying about her mother's well-being. Jessica had been turning off the water and gas before she left for work or errands, fearing her mother might flood the neighbors again. They had even had to hide knives and sharp objects and put locks on both balcony doors. Of course, once Mary was checked into the nursing home, the neighbors began to gossip and judge Jessica. Rumors spread that she had sent her mother away and was now renting out her apartment. Robert, feeling slighted, stopped communicating with Jessica altogether. But Jessica didn't let the opinions of outsiders bother her. She regularly visited her mother in the nursing home and found her thriving, well cared for, and under the supervision of medical professionals. Sometimes Mary didn't recognize her, but Jessica wasn't offended. Finally, she felt a sense of peace regarding her relationship with her mother.